everybody, and welcome back to yet another video and to another tier list here on the channel. I love doing tier list videos. I don't do them nearly as often as I wish I did, but I'm very, very excited for the one we have here today. Today, I'm going to be ranking Expanded Universe Cars Diecast lines. In addition to the Cars Diecast main line, nearly every year for the past decade now, we've been getting additional Expanded Universe toy lines that are oftentimes just original concepts created for merchandise, or are otherwise based on things outside of the Cars movies, shows, and shorts. For example, Cars based on Christmas and Easter books, or the TROC and XRS, new Cars stories that were created for the sake of having additional content and additional merchandise. And today we're going to be ranking all of the little diecast lines that we've gotten over the years for these. Now, before we begin, I do want to apologize for the screen ratio in this video. Unfortunately, our old pal Tier Maker, I can't call it an old pal. This is the first time I've ever done a tier list that's not just me screen recording my desktop. Yeah, this time we're using Tier Maker, and it's just polluted with ads. So I had to screen record it very awkwardly. It's kind of in a square shape, so I'm sorry if at any point watching this video reminds you of Zack Snyder's Justice League cut. Sorry about that. I'd also like to thank Cars Likes Ninjago, who helped me put together this tier list. Tier list was made by him, and if you want to do it yourself, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Anyway, the Expanded Universe lines we are ranking are holiday cars. I organized these in chronological order. So then we have the Silver Racers, Neon Racers, Ice Racers, Carbon Racers, Road Trip line, the Carnival Racers, we have Easter Cars, Beach Racers, Thomas Sowell Racing Legends, the XRS Mud Racing and Drag Racing, Fan Favorites, XRS Rocket Racing, the Endurance Racers, Pixar Fest 2020, NASCAR, Welcome to Radiator Springs, Pixar Fest 2021, Welcome to Radiator Springs, sort of version 2, where they had the keychains instead of the accessories. And finally, Disney 100 and Glow Racers. Now, I know Welcome to Radiator Springs isn't really, it's not an Expanded Universe series, but it is a store-exclusive sub-line, so I did think it was fitting to include here, as after the XRS was done, Walmart got the NASCAR line, and then Target got the Welcome to Radiator Springs line. So I only felt it was appropriate. You might be wondering, then why didn't you include the Radiator Springs Classic line? And the reason why I didn't include that or Cars Tunes are simply because those are much larger lines. I'm trying to limit it to all the little smaller lines we've gotten over the years. I almost didn't include the Christmas cars because they've existed for many years in many incarnations. But yeah, so that's why I didn't do Radiator Springs Classic, and I did do Welcome to Radiator Springs. Anyway, let's begin with the Christmas cars. Now, as I said just a second ago, Christmas cars have existed in a wide variety of incarnations over the years. They first began as an offshoot of the Storytellers line, another Expanded Universe line I decided not to include here because, again, it's a much bigger line. And they've expanded, they've outlived the Storytellers line, and after the Storytellers line was gone, we continued to get Christmas cars practically annually. For a while, you could only really find them at Cars Land, I believe, but as time went on, they've become more and more frequently appearing. In their current incarnation, they are known as the Wintertime Cruisers line, which started up back a few years ago now, and will basically re-release the same few holiday cars every year, but with some new releases mixed in. So the great thing about the Christmas cars is that they're all based on something. They're all based on the Mater Saves Christmas book, which, yes, is a pretty old book now, but that's what makes it so much cooler when we get new releases like Clutch Kringle, who we got for the Christmas of 2023. They're going back to this 15-year-old book, guys, just to give us cars, Christmas cars, instead of making them up out of the blue. Out of all the cars here, I think the only one made up in any Christmas wave ever is the blue Ramon that we got in the first wave of Wintertime Cruisers, which I think was purely done to have an alternative and to have a new Ramon in addition to the previous pre-existing Christmas Cruiser Ramon. The holiday cars are great, not just because they're based off of a pre-existing thing, but also because they're all just so nice. There's something so warm and cozy about having holiday versions of all the Radiator Springs cars. They have lasted longer than anything here. They're re-released frequently, and it's clear they're not going away anytime soon. The only thing that I have a problem with the holiday cars is the fact that we still don't have Flo, Red, and Lizzie. But, you know, I don't like doing this with the first entry, but the holiday cars need to go in S tier. There is no way they are not top tier cars expanded universe. To me, they are like the quintessential expanded universe. When I think of expanded universe cars, I go right to Mater Saves Christmas. Silver Racers. This is where the fun begins, guys. Let's talk about Silver Racers. You may be wondering why they're so early in the list when I said that when I said that I was going in chronological order. Because this Silver Racers card back was introduced in 2015, and the next item, the Neon Racers, is from 2014. Well, in case you didn't know, the Silver Racers were retconned into being an expanded universe line. Originally, back in, I want to say 2012, although it may have been 2011, there was a line of Kmart exclusive silver cars. But in 2015, when these guys were re-released, it was decided to grandfather them in to the TROC line, which was going on at the time. So these cars, all the Silver World Grand Prix Racers, were retconned into being an expanded universe line. So that is why they're here. Now here's the thing with the Silver Racers, and I feel this way about a lot of the TROC, but they're all so hit or miss. I feel like the XRS is a lot more consistent from release to release. And maybe that's because all the cars in the XRS are just regular old Piston Cup racers with modifications. Whereas for the World Grand Prix racers, they all have sort of more unique designs that you have to work with. So you have items that I really, really like in the Silver Racers line. Silver Francesco, Silver Nigel Gearsley. There are a few that I'm quite a big fan of, and then there are others that I just think don't work. Silver Raul is pretty lame because barely any of him is silver. Silver Miguel Camino, I was never a big fan of because, once again, so little of him is silver. Mattel's, concept of just taking the base metal color and making it silver, unfortunately, means that a lot of the World Grand Prix cars, which are very much multicolored, don't end up looking too good. Now, I think if this started as a TROC line, and wasn't originally just a bunch of cars turned silver to be store exclusives, if they started this off as a TROC line from the jump, like if the first release was 2015, I could totally see them doing something a lot more stylized. Think like the D100 cars, where they sort of went out of their way to make them all a bit more unique in terms of the silver designs. But for what we have here, yeah, it's just the World Grand Prix cars turned silver, and just because they're so hit or miss, we're going to throw them in C tier. C's the exact middle of the list. So C is going to be ones where I'm on the fence with them. I think they're good. C we'll call like the mixed bag tier. Some of them pretty solid. Some of them not too solid. Speaking of which, the Neon Racers. I have a complicated relationship with the Neon Racers. The Neon Racers were the first TROC line, and one of my all-time favorite cars items in my collection comes from the Neon Racers, that being the 2014 Neon Racers Comic-Con exclusive box set. Unfortunately, that's a convention exclusive, so I'm not counting that here. So I don't even know why I mentioned that, but that was one of my first experiences with the Neon Racers. I have a few of them in my collection. Looking at them now, I have Max Schnell, Nigel Gearsley, and Raul. And the thing with them is, I think that, all of the other TROC lines did better than the Neon Racers line. And now that we have the Glow Racers, which actually glow in the dark, versus the Neon Racers who just look like they glow, and Neon Racers aren't as cool. I used to think the Neon Racers were so cool, but as I've gotten more and more in hand over the years, I don't know, they're just not as interesting. They do look really good, and the way they pull off the neon light designs and printing on them is pretty solid. But they still have the World Grand Prix logos on them, is one of the big issues people will point out to you. They're just not the most interesting. Some of them, like Nigel Gearsley, you could barely tell is a neon variant. And by far the biggest issue with the Neon Racers line is the fact that only half of the World Grand Prix racers were made. Look, the Silver Racers were missing Rip Kluczkonski, which is disappointing. But after this, they made a conscious effort to try to make sure you had a full set of World Grand Prix racers. Neon Racers didn't even make, like, Jeff Gorvette and Francesco, two of the most prominent racers. I don't even think they made Carlo Veloso, who, in canon, is the one that wins the Neon race. According to, like, all the material that's adapted the actual story of the Neon race, the winner of the race wasn't even made as a diecast. And I think I'm going to throw it in C tier. Again, another mixed bag. Some of them look good, some of them don't, and we're missing most of the racers. So we'll throw that in C tier. Maybe I'll move that down. We'll have to see. Ice Racers. Okay. Ice Racers are the first line where I think they really took TROC cars to the next level. Man, it's basically a TROC tier list at this point. Don't worry, it gets more interesting in a few minutes. But to anyone who ever wanted me to rank the TROC, here you guys go, okay? Ice Racers. Ice Racers get pretty expensive now because they really tried on them. They're pretty impressive. But just like with the other TROC lines, in my opinion, the biggest issue is the way that they try to adapt these designs onto the World Grand Prix racers. As I said, with the Silver Racers, when you get to the XRS later on, there's consistency in design from release to release because of the modifications. All of the cars have monster truck wheels. All of the cars have rockets shooting out of their backs. But with the World Grand Prix racers, it wasn't a body modification. The change was the application of a color. Or something along those lines. Yeah, it was the application of the neon lights on a darker color scheme. The application of the carbon fiber coloring with the carbon racers, which we'll get to in a minute, and the application of a shade of light blue to all of the ice racers in some capacity, and that really makes them hit or miss, you know? With the mud racers, they all have monster truck wheels. If you don't like the monster truck wheels, you probably won't like them. But here, it's just simple color theory. Some are gonna look better than others. That's all there is to it, you know? Some designs are gonna work better. Some cars are gonna have just better usage of color. Some colors are gonna clash and not look as good. So it's once again a case of case by case. Each racer, you know, some are definitely better than others. And what if I told you that, once again, I think I'm going to have to drop these in C tier, guys. I'm sorry that these keep ending up in C tier, but it's just another case of, like, you know, case by case. Some of them are great, some of them are weak. At least with these, we got all the racers. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more I sort of realize, like, honestly, I'm going to bump it up to B tier. Because, yeah, we got all the racers, and that light blue isn't very intrusive on them. You know? It is sort of a unifying thing, but each car, yeah, I think it belongs above Neon Racers. Each car does sort of stand out on its own. And again, they went out of their way to give them all specific ice race logos and ditch the World Grand Prix logos. I think B tier is the place for these guys. Anyway, moving on to our next TROC line, we have the Carbon Race. Canonically, this takes place in Germany and is sort of hosted by Max Schnell. And in order to do better in the race, all the racers are outfitted with carbon fiber. And that allows for their designs to be slightly different. And just like with the ice racers, on some of the cars it looks good, and on some, not so much. It's once again an issue of colors matching or clashing. And that's really just how I feel with all the TROC lines in general, as you could clearly tell by now. It really is so specific to the character and the variant. But, once again, Carbon Racers get bonus points for effort. Up first, this line, like, changed some spoiler molds. Like for Rip Klutchgonski in the Carbon Racers line, he had his own unique, different spoiler. I believe Francesco did as well. So I like the fact that they modified them to fit the conditions of the race a bit better. And I think that the carbon fiber works pretty well on most designs. It's not like the Carnival Cup, which we'll get to in a minute, where, you know, they're given all these bright colors just for the sake of it. The Carbon Racers are the most functional. Like, you could tell they've been modified for this race. It makes sense for them all to have unique designs beyond the fact that this is a unique race, you know? They've all been outfitted with carbon fiber, and since carbon fiber is a real thing that can really be applied to cars, I think I'm a bit more forgiving of the carbon fiber line. Now, I love the TROC line. I think everyone loves the TROC line, but, you know, I think that, like I was saying with the colors clashing, when it comes to the Carbon Racers, it just makes sense. I can excuse the fact that some of the cars won't look as good because they have the carbon fiber applied, simply because carbon fiber is a real thing, and that's how it would actually look if you were to apply carbon fiber to one of those cars. So, just like Ice Racers before it, Carbon Racers is going to go in B tier for the extra effort they threw in, and the fact that functionally, design-wise, these guys make pretty good sense. Now we are finally almost done with the TROC guys. We just have one group left, but it's time for the Road Trip line. A line that I adore, okay? Road Trip line, incredible. This is the first line we've seen here today that makes new original designs for the Radiator Springs townsfolk, envisioning them all going off on a road trip. And we got almost all the townies. Lizzie was canceled. Sorry, Lizzie. But man, the road trip line is amazing. Cars were sold as both singles or with trailers. And yeah, all these cars had trailer hitches on the back that could attach to their trailers. That hitch system was even used again in 2018 for Sarge with Cannon. Like, this line established a trailer system for Cars Diecasts, which was pretty cool. It had a lot of stellar releases. I think the weakest release is probably Mater, who was just Mater with, like, bumper stickers all over him. Mater, if he had the design of Nick stickers, and it wasn't all that interesting. But all the other cars were so good with their unique vacation design. Something as simple as giving Sheriff and Flo sunglasses and little packages, and Sally a little roof piece of luggage really goes a long way. And these have been some of my favorite cars for a long time. If you watch my Cars Adventure series, you know, whenever the characters go on vacation, I take out the road trip variants. These are really solid. S tier. Yeah, I went there, okay? Yeah, it's S tier. Alright? Okay. Carry on. Carnival Racers. I must say, the Carnival Racers line is one that I'm not all that acquainted with. I don't own anyone from this line, and it was the last TROC line, and because its second wave came out pretty close to the release of Cars 3 diecasts, it got pretty rare. I think these are some of the most expensive TROC cars, which is saying something because a lot of the TROC cars have gotten stupid expensive over the past few years. I remember seeing a few Carnival Racers when I went out to buy Cars 3 diecasts for the first time in 2017, and in hindsight, I really should have picked them up, because to this day, I have none of these guys. I don't really have a strong opinion on the Carnival Racers because of that. So I think, once again, I'll throw them in C tier, probably. All these cars have these really nice, vibrant colors all over them. But again, it's not a line that I really have much of an opinion on. And, now it sort of has a stigma of being the rarest, the hardest to find Hero C line. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe these also belong in B tier. Will be nice. I'll just keep them in C. You know what? Yeah, if I owned a few, it'd probably go up to B tier. Um, yeah. If something's in C, there's no hard feelings against it. C tier is just, like I said, for ones that I think are mixed bags, ones that I think are pretty okay. Anything below C tier is going to be where things get bad. We'll see what or if anything gets put down there. Anyway, it's time. We've finally freed ourselves from lines that are just a bunch of repaints of racers. Until we enter that again, because almost every other line here is that. Thanks, cars. Anyway, Easter cars. Much like the Christmas cars, I adore the Easter cars. These were first released in 2017. A few Easter cars made their way into the main line in 2021, and now they're returning for 2024. Don't you hate the passage of time? That's crazy. Feels like these came out yesterday to me. 2024 easily has the best Easter car lineup, as we're getting all the 2017 cars re-released, plus the one car that was a new release in 2021, McQueen with the bunny ears, plus a new release of Easter Flow. And just like the Christmas cars before it, I think these have to go in S tier. Yeah, the line isn't as expansive as the holiday cars, but just like with the holiday cars, these are all cars, specific main character variants based on a book. Based on a book about a holiday. I think it's super cool that we get these and that we are getting new ones for the first time. Well, I guess not for the first time. I was going to say for the first time in a long time, and then I remember that we got the McQueen with bunny ears like 2-3 years ago, so never mind. But yeah. I guess you could kind of sense a pattern here. These are all lines that specialize in Radiator Springs character variants. I do tend to lean towards really liking Radiator Springs variants, especially because the racers, so many of the EU lines are super racer dominated. When you get into the Cars 3 stuff, it's not as interesting because you start just getting a lot of non-speaking background next gens, and it feels kind of repetitive. But when you get the Radiator Springs Townies, it feels like they always go above and beyond to make them all special because they're main characters with personalities you can work with, Anyway, though, no, I'm not constantly going to be putting Radiator Springs Townie lines above everything else because I got some opinions that will be revealed later. Anyway, Beach Racers. These were super exciting when they came out. If you were around in the Cars community in the early spring of 2018 when these were revealed, you were hyped. Okay, you were hyped. But this has a pretty interesting phenomenon around it. This is a rare case of a line being super hyped up, and now looking back, everyone's like, oh yeah, that existed. Nobody really cares about Fireball Beach Racers anymore, from what I've seen, and they've really faded into obscurity, simply because compared to the racer lines we got later, these are super simple. These are just pre-existing Cars 3 racers and a few other characters like Mater, Luigi, and Guido with sandy overspray on them, similar to the snowy overspray on the ice racers, but the ice racers had unique designs and the beach racers don't. I like these for the fact that they are simply like specific weather condition variants of characters. I always thought that was pretty cool, but I think these just objectively have to be put in D tier for not being the most interesting. I honestly think that they shouldn't be looked on in a bad way, looked back on poorly. But, like I said, the fact that we've gotten so many other Cars 3 racer lines afterwards has really made the beach racers not as interesting. They're just cars with an overspray and sand detailing on them. If I look at them on my shelf, I see a Rich Mixon and a Rich Mixon that looks like he has a slightly lighter overspray on him. You can't even see the sand from the front, for the most part. So yeah, that's going to go in D tier, just because they're not the most interesting. But again, I don't think we should look back on them poorly. They do a pretty good job at being cars covered in sand. That's kind of it. But a few months after that, we got the Thomasville Racing Legends. the McQueen picture here isn't really a good depiction of what this line was. Thomasville Racing Legends was a line that took miscellaneous Cars 3 Piston Cup racers and redesigned them to be basically repping sponsors and designs from the 50s within the Cars universe. These were Piston Cup racers basically dressed up like older racers. Now, the cool thing with this is the fact that they were all based on background racers from the flashback scenes in Cars 3. And after this line came out, we've actually gotten some of the flashback cars that these characters were dressed up as. It's a really fun detail, just attention to detail and lore and world building. But yeah, this line is incredible, okay? McQueen was just a metallic version of Fabulous McQueen, because, you know, McQueen's already dressed up like Doc at the end of Cars 3, so they decided to just make a metallic variant, and that's one of my favorite metallic variants of all time. So even McQueen, who I guess you could say got the short end of the stick compared to other lines we'll see later, where they kind of put it all into McQueen and not much into other characters. Yeah, despite McQueen getting the short end of the stick here, he ends up being really, really nice looking. A car we may not have gotten if we hadn't gotten this line. Who am I kidding? They would have found a place to throw a metallic Fabulous McQueen in somewhere. Well, anyway, this line is great. It shows so much fun and creativity, and like I said, it's great for the world building of the Cars series. There's a lot to love here in the Thomasville Racers line, and guys, I kind of want to put it in S tier. Okay, there, I did it. I put it in S tier. Okay, there. Yep, I did it. This is probably my favorite racer line. The only problem is that it was gone too soon. They did not make enough of these guys. I wish they'd made more. But you know who got a lot of releases? 3 whole waves. The XRS Mud Racers. These guys are really cool. I think they're so cool that the XRS never really recaptured the magic of the Mud Racers. The Mud Racers were a really, really solid line. These souped up, suspended variants of Cars 3 Racers. They had working suspension. You could sort of move the cars from side to side and bounce them up and down. And it really set a precedent for just how great the XRS could be. Like the TROC, but with, like, physical gimmicks. The TROC with actual modifications to the mold. And I guess it did pretty well, because it got not only 2 waves, but a 3rd wave that released a year after the first one, and after the 2nd and 3rd XRS lines had already started. In my opinion, the weakest point of the XRS Mud Racers is the fact that they made a deluxe line with a souped-up Mater, Miss Fritter, and RV, because canonically this race takes place at the Thunder Hollow Demolition Derby. I always thought those releases were stupid. But other than that, this is a really solid line where all of the cars are exquisitely molded, really well detailed, and they just worked out really, really well here. I don't know. Where do I put it? I think I gotta drop it. I think I'm gonna drop it in A. I need to stop putting things in S tier, but man, this is one of my favorites. Fine, it'll go in S tier too, but I may bump you down. Okay? Alright. Anyway, let's move on to the second XRS line, XRS Drag Racers. Released in the summer of 2019, this line was another really fun one. In fact, for years, I've said it was my favorite XRS line, and that it was a crime that it ended so soon. And I think the fact that it ended so soon is gonna dock points off of it here. Yeah, the XRS Drag Racers were really fun. Once again, you had these souped up cars, but this time built to drag race, like the style of driving, not RuPaul. Although a line of RuPaul cars would be very interesting concept. Anyway, yeah, XRS Drag Racers were super fun, but they sort of showed the fact that the XRS didn't have interesting gimmicks beyond the suspension of the XRS mud racers. XRS cars were sold for, I believe it was $7 each, versus the $5 here in the US for individual singles. With the XRS mud racers, that made sense. Sorry, I think it was $6 because deluxes were $7. So the higher price point made sense because you were getting larger cars. When you got into the drag racers, they continued with that $6 price point, but it wasn't as interesting, like it wasn't as worth it because the cars weren't as big. Yes, they had these big back wheels and big spoilers, and ooh, they had moving pistons when you rolled them, ooh. But moving pistons, which barely matter, didn't really constitute a $2 price hike. Now, I mean, they look pretty good, and yes, they are larger than your regular cars, but the XRS Mud Racers were just more worth it, and the drag racing line, for whatever reason, only got its initial wave of releases, as well as Brickyardly, who released a bit later. But unlike the XRS Mud Racers and Rocket Racers, there was no continuation of this line. It didn't keep going, which is a shame. I think if we had gotten more cars, then it probably would stay my favorite XRS line. But for now, I'm going to throw it in A tier. If my mouse can cooperate. There we go. I think that it is one of the most underrated lines here. I think it's super underrated. I think it's forgotten because you either remember how great the Mud Racers were or how weird the Rocket Racers were. Drag Racers got one wave sandwiched in between, and I think that they really deserved a whole lot more. Now we got to move on to the fan favorites line, which is certainly an interesting one. Fan favorites is actually a pretty clever pun. No, despite its name, it is not releasing fan favorite characters from throughout the Cars series. It is instead releasing the variants of the Radiator Springs characters dressed up as fans. They all have hats and different accessories repping either McQueen or Cruz. And they're fun. They're pretty fun. They do reuse accessories at a few points. Like Mater and Sarge have the exact same hat. Clearly, this was all inspired by all the scenes in Cars 3, where we see Mater wearing a wide variety of different wacky hats. This line also has the advantage of releasing a car that was actually in the movie, where we got Maddie McGear with her McQueen and Cruz hat, which we see her wear in the credits of Cars 3 in one of those framed photos. And that seems to, in addition to Mater's hats, be one of the big inspirations behind this line as a whole, because a lot of cars have both McQueen and Cruz themed accessories on them. It made the names of these guys a nightmare, because they were called things like Team 95 and 51 Flow. And it's like, you could have come up with better things, guys. Yeah. Once again, it is a Radiator Springs main character variant line, which once again released most of the main characters, but was missing a few significant ones like Sally, and Lizzie and Red were planned but canceled. Some other Mater variants were planned but canceled. One of them ended up being thrown in the 2021 main line. This whole line clearly had bigger plans that didn't come to fruition. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty fun. Oh, as you can see, the image that Cars Like Ninjago used here was just the Cruz on the line, which was a regular Cruz with an accessory to justify the $1 higher price point that, you know, these store exclusive cars get. I really don't know where to place this one, because yes, it is a main character variant series, and it is a unique and fun concept, but it's not as good as the Road Trip line or the holiday cars. Honestly, I think I'm going to go C tier. Again, C tier doesn't mean it's bad. C tier just means it's fine. C tier is it's good. And then D tier is like, oh, not that good. And then E and F tier are for bad cars. Speaking of bad cars, it's the XRS Rocket Racers. I was one of the first people to find the Rocket Racers in stores, and man, I didn't like them. These just, to this day, I think they don't work. Released in early 2020, this was the third and final XRS line, having the cars modified to go as fast as physically possible. while they had fun details like the fact that their windows were bolted down and they clearly had additional pieces put on them to maximize speed, they had details that made them look weird, like giant plastic flames shooting out of the back, or the fact that none of them had spoilers. Now, I understand that there is a realistic reason behind this based on the storyline behind this series, but the lack of spoilers on these cars made most of them look really, 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 really rough. Now, I think they're not as bad as I once thought they were when they first came out. I really didn't like these. I was trying my best to find anything positive to say about them. As the line went on, I think we got more that looked a bit better, especially the third wave, which featured 4 next gens of the Danny Suarez model. I thought those all looked pretty good. I don't own any of them because none of them ever came to the US. But yeah, they really looked rough, especially McQueen, Cruz, and Jackson. The background next gens looked a bit better, other than Barry DePedal. He just looked weird and wrong and off. Now, one of the biggest issues I have with this line is the fact that they removed the veteran racers from the XRS line here, which I guess makes sense because this is all about cars trying to go as fast as possible, and they're supposed to be older and slower. But then again, so was McQueen, and he was included, but you can't not include McQueen, obviously. Unfortunately, we are still yet to get a line that incorporates the veteran racers again, which I guess is fine, you know, from a lore standpoint. Of course, any post Cars 3 Piston Cup race, Piston Cup affiliated race, is gonna include the next gens and McQueen because he's the main character, and not all the cars that retired. Now, the Rocket Racers, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know where to put them, guys. They're gonna go in E tier. There are some that look okay. Most of them are bad, in my opinion. Oh wait, I didn't even talk about how here they finally ran out of, like, good gimmick ideas. Yeah, these had big plastic spinning flames that shot out of the back, and clearly they realized, oh, that's not enough. We'll throw in the old pit stop area accessory, redesigned to be blast walls. These were so clearly just, like, stretching to hit that $2 higher price threshold. And I think if you're clearly struggling to come up with a way to hit a price threshold that is $2 more than your usual one, maybe your idea isn't all that good. Ironically, Cars on the Road would later do super high-speed racers, and they all look pretty good because they were based on actual concepts for super high-speed cars instead of remove the spoiler and bolt them down and give them spinning plastic flames. Okay, let's move on. Oh no, it's the Endurance Racers next. Hold on, wait. Pixar Fest cars kind of came out before them, and I have much nicer things to say about Pixar Fest. We're going to do that instead. Take a nice little break from me ranting about racer variants. Okay. Pixar Fest was a line released in 2020 to commemorate Pixar Fest, which was just an online event they did because it was 2020 and everyone had an online event. Except me. I should have jumped on the bandwagon. Anyway, Pixar Fest released 3 cars, McQueen, Mater, and Ramon, and had them all have Pixar decals on them. The Luxo ball, the lamp, etc. They also had special metallic designs, and all 3 of these turned out pretty solid. I think Mater is probably my favorite of the 3 of them. He was one of my favorite releases of the entire year of 2020. Ramon, it's great to have a new Ramon variant, but it bothers me that he permanently has his paint gun on his side. I wish he didn't have the paint gun. And McQueen is really fun. It's like a spin on the old Motorama McQueen design. Really solid line throughout. Yeah, it's only 3 cars, but yeah, pretty solid. We will throw it in C tier. Anyway, now on to the 24-hour endurance racers. These have some of the stupidest storylines behind them. Or I guess the stupidest storyline behind them that I've seen with the Cars Diecast line. I don't really know what's going on here. They're labeled to be on like the RS 24-hour Speedway or something. So that implies that there's a Radiator Springs Speedway. And also McQueen is in his Cars 2 mold and is supposed to be like a next gen here. This line is the most like toyish line I've ever seen in the Cars Diecast line. This is a line where it feels like they had no regard for the actual Cars lore, you know? And usually I'm on the standpoint of, well, these are toys. They're meant to be toys. Let them be toys. And yeah, let them be toys. But all the other Cars lines abide pretty well to the story of the Cars series. And this one just kind of doesn't. This one just feels like it made up things out of thin air versus the other ones, which definitely were a bit more structured in terms of story. Also, coming off of the XRS, to have this line that wasn't XRS and was just weird random new racers was also kind of strange. So just from the backbone of it, I think it just doesn't work. Beyond that, the main reason why I think it doesn't work beyond the story is these cars, like, the gimmick sucks. Okay, there, I said it. These cars claim to have color shift paint or something. Basically, they look to be slightly different colors when you hold them up to light in specific angles. That's not a gimmick, that's just how lighting works. Now, yeah, they were full of glitter and special metallic paint, which again makes them look slightly different depending on the angle, but it's such a lame gimmick. I didn't even realize it. I was so confused as to what the gimmick was supposed to be. This is the first line I stopped buying for the Expanded Universe lines in my time of collecting cars, because I just didn't like them. The gimmick was lame, the story behind it was weird, and the racers themselves, other than McQueen, who got a fully new design, the racers themselves straight up reused their pre-existing Cars 3 designs, just with the spoiler that had a little clock logo on it. Honestly, that little clock logo is pretty fun, and is probably my favorite thing about this line, which is saying something. Really says something about how weak this line was. Yeah. Also, they introduced this color shift technology and made the stupid decision to release these at the same time they brought color changers back. Cars that, like, actually legit change color in an impressive way. Endurance racers, you're going in F tier. No ifs, ands, or buts. You're going in F tier. Goodbye. Goodbye, endurance racers. Okay. Let's move on to the NASCAR line. This one, I know, is going to be super hard to rank because it's the NASCAR line. Much like with the Beach Racers, if you were there when this was announced, you absolutely flipped out. It was the 15th anniversary of the Cars series, and I like to think that this was one of their ways of celebrating it. The NASCAR line, where they teamed up with NASCAR designers, and I'm pretty sure they let NASCAR designers make their own Disney Cars designs. So we got special NASCAR variants of McQueen and Jackson, and eventually Cruz, who was only sold in the 5-pack, as well as the cars that were voiced by NASCAR racers in Cars 3, with Chase Racelot, Bubba Wheelhouse, and Ryan Inside Laney, which was cool enough on its own. To get to see these cars redesigned in this special way, but not only that, the part that really made people go crazy for these were the new characters introduced for it. In order to continue the collaboration with NASCAR, they decided to carify several other currently racing NASCAR drivers. But instead of, trying to go through the legal nightmare of tying down their sponsors to use for the cars, they brought back the old sponsors from the first Cars movie that didn't make it into Cars 3 and made them into next-gen designs. This was something fans had been doing for years, and to see it acknowledged and officially made, to have official next-gen Sidewall Shine and Shifty Drug and Fiber Fuel, all those cars, to this day, it still blows my mind. And unfortunately, yeah, we never got a Taco Mint car, but we got an HTB next-gen. An official HTB next-gen design. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. So yeah, crazy line and a real fun time that really shows the amount of care and love for Cars fans that the team at Mattel and Disney and Pixar have. My main problem with this, well, there are two. The first one is that sometimes the designs could be pretty weak. In my opinion, the best looking cars in this line are, ironically enough, the ones that are cars that appeared in the movie. Chase, Ryan, and Bubba are, in my opinion, far superior to their movie designs. McQueen looks pretty solid. Cruz is a really fun take that designs her to look more like a traditional modern day racer instead of having the more futuristic looking decals of the original Dinoco Cruz. Jackson is pretty lame, to be honest. They seem to kind of struggle with giving Jackson unique designs in these series, other than the endurance racers where they straight up just made him blue. But yeah, the new racers, in my opinion, all had pretty weak designs, with the exception of like Eric Almiroling. I really liked him. But some of the other ones, Sidewall Shine, Fiber Fuel, Shifty Drug, I think they were quite a bit weaker. The HGB racer was super cool to get, although I know most people would have much preferred Taco Mint, and the HGB racer Rowdy Revan Bush, for some reason, is still covered in stickers like Chick Hicks was. Like, I know this is a super big nitpick, but Chick Hicks being covered in stickers was a part of his character, to show how self-absorbed he was and how much he only cared for the fame. And here, as cool as it is that Rowdy Revan Bush has, like, the stickers, they're sort of faded in as, like, a part of his paint scheme. That's really cool, but, like, that was part of Chick Hicks' character, not the sponsor design. Easily, though, my least favorite in this line is Mater, who was given a headset and called Crew Chief Mater for some reason. I think just so that they could have a Mater in there. We also got Pit Crew Luigi and Guido, which I really like, but Mater just didn't work well in my opinion, purely because they took a Mater, regular Mater, in his current form. He's a repaint of Mater with headset from Cars 2. Actually, he may not be. I think he has a unique headset. And they just made him red. He just kind of looks like one of those knockoffs you find on eBay, or that you used to see in like Just for Fun 290 videos, where they would just have a factory custom Mater that was painted all black, and now he was the Batman Mater. Like, they would just take Maters and just change the color, and maybe that's the reason why I think he looks so much like a knockoff, but just something looks off with Mater. Mater as one consistent color, in my opinion, just doesn't work when it's in his modern form. Mater in his modern form is supposed to be all rusty, and they know usually when they're making special versions of Mater. Typically, they make them repaints of brand new Mater, and I think that typically looks a lot better here. Yeah, the Mater was pretty weak. Just looked kind of off. That to me looked the most like it wasn't designed by somebody at Disney. Again, I've heard that these were designed by people at NASCAR, and that Mater makes me believe that like whoever worked on that isn't as familiar with how Mater designs typically operate. Yeah, that was sort of the big issue with this line, in my opinion. Some of the designs just weren't all that strong. Yeah, but regardless, it's a super cool line. I know I've talked about it for so long here. It's just because it's a series that I love so much. It's another one that I feel like has sort of faded from people's memories. And while it is great to have this line that pays tribute to Cars fans so much, my other main problem with the line is the fact that, like, nothing screams NASCAR about this. This is a Cars line first and foremost. The most NASCAR thing about it is the fact that they made car puns based off of people's names who race in NASCAR. And, like, the NASCAR next-gen tires or wheels they tried to introduce later on in the line. Like, I wish that it had something more NASCAR-y about it. And I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I kind of wish that they had, given the cars NASCAR logos instead of Piston Cup logos. Something to make them say, hey, this is a NASCAR car, not just a regular old car. And one of the biggest missed opportunities in the whole line was the NASCAR Through the Years 5-pack, which featured several cars based off of or voiced by actual NASCAR racers, who all just used their cars' designs. It would have been really cool to get, like, a legit NASCAR Jeff Gorvette designed to look like a car Jeff Gordon used instead of just a typical old Jeff Gorvette. Now, actually, wait, Jeff wasn't even in that pack. Jeff wasn't in that pack, but you get what I mean, or like something along those lines. You know, it would have been really nice to get cars like that. Now, again, that is a licensing and legal nightmare, but I just wish there was something more here for NASCAR fans. Because for Cars fans, this is amazing. But if you're a NASCAR fan, there's nothing really to interest you, unless you like pun names. Now, I'm not a NASCAR fan. I don't watch NASCAR. So, I'm going to stick this pretty high up. I'm going to put it in B tier. Yeah. But again, if I were a NASCAR fan, I think maybe I'd put it a little lower because I just, you know, for a crossover, you want something that has attributes from both things. This is like 90% cars, 10% NASCAR. Anyway, let's move on to Welcome to Radiator Springs. Another pretty interesting series. Started in around 2021 as a Target exclusive line, this stands out for being sort of a spiritual successor to the Radiator Springs Classic line. A line that used to be Toys R Us exclusive that would just sell re-releases of characters from the first Cars movie, and then eventually expanded to making new releases and cars from Cars 2, all roughly with a Radiator Springs theme to them. Welcome to Radiator Springs is sort of a revamped version of that, but instead acts as like a welcome line. This is sort of your starter pack for Cars, and well, kind of. You see, I think it strikes a pretty strange balance between trying to appeal to new buyers and trying to appeal to longtime collectors. The first wave featured a few re-releases of pretty common cars. Radiator Springs McQueen, Sarge, Doc, Ramon was on a 5-pack. And then Sally with Tattoo and Blowing Bubbles Mater. Two heavily desirable re-releases, but like very, very scene-specific releases, you know? So I feel like it didn't really fully know what it wanted to be, or maybe it wanted to be this sort of starter pack line, but knew that, oh, well, you know, longtime buyers won't want just a regular old Mater, so we could do Blowing Bubbles Mater. But a new buyer then doesn't get a normal Mater, they get Blowing Bubbles Mater. The other thing about these is that clearly to appeal to people more, and once again justify the higher price point of a store exclusive, these guys all came with accessories and cute little commemorative stickers, little bumper stickers. Hooray. They're not bumper stickers, they're just regular stickers that were called bumper stickers. Which I guess you could put on your bumper, hypothetically, so forget I said anything. Anyway, these each came with accessories, all of which were reused from a wide variety of places. Sally with Tattoo came with a table from a 2-pack with McQueen from 2013. Lizzie was repacked with her radio. Radiator Springs McQueen came with the rusty and dusty little video phone. Shout out the Beyonce song of the same name that they use in Cars 3. Mater came with hay bales from an old Smokey 5-pack. It was cool to see all of these accessories come back, but again, it just felt like a strange attempt to combine a line that could appeal to new buyers and old buyers and still justify the higher price point of a store exclusive. We're gonna throw it in D tier. Fine, no, it'll go in D tier because of the accessories. Otherwise, it's just generic re-releases and a few nice ones. But Sally with Tattoo and Blowing Bubbles Mater ended up being like the only cool releases. I remember waiting wave after wave, wondering, hey, who's gonna come next? And it was all just regular main character variants. Pixar Fest 2021 brought back the Pixar Fest line better than before, in my opinion, with 4 cars this year, technically 5 because one of them was Luigi and Guido. You had a new McQueen, this time based off of Radiator Springs McQueen, a new Ramon, painted in all white, Sally, and Luigi and Guido. And just like the year before, they were pretty solid. I've heard that the Pixar Fest event is coming back to Disney Parks this year. I wonder if we'll get more Pixar Fest cars. That would be super cool. The 2020 line was really hard to find in stores, and they kind of overcompensated in 2021 by releasing these a lot. These were flooding pegs for a few weeks where I lived. But it was once again pretty solid. The biggest issue with this wave of Pixar Fest was the fact that the Ramon wasn't metallic. Yeah, artwork, like his prototype art that you could see on the back of the package, shows that it seems they wanted him to be sort of a metallic off-white color, but I guess I couldn't make that work. So the second Ramon was just really awkwardly a flat white when the rest of the line was all metallic. And as cool as it is to have an all-white Ramon, I honestly think I would have preferred a fully new character. McQueen I don't mind, because McQueen was still metallic and based on a different McQueen. If that Ramon were metallic, this wave would be pretty flawless to me, but I don't know. This is also going to go in C tier. Pretty on point with the original wave. Anyway, Welcome to Radiator Springs would get a revamp later on, when they decided to continue it past its first few waves. Now, instead of being packed with accessories, they would come packed with cheap plastic keychains. Woo! On one side, there would be a sticker showing you a screenshot from the hit film Cars. On the back, another sticker showing the character's license plate, which was pretty cool. It was like the Precision Series keychains, but cheaper and less unique. And cheaper and less fun and less cool and less interesting. And I guess they ran out of accessories to pack everyone with, huh? Now, second incarnation of Welcome to Radiator Springs, it gets interesting because, yeah, it continued to just re-release regular old main character variants, but then some interesting stuff started happening. In this line, in early 2022, we ended up getting, or was it 2023? I don't remember, but, no, it was 2022, right? We got a new Sally that actually used the corrected Sally mold that people have been asking for years, and went with a new, lighter color scheme that arguably made it the most film-accurate Sally in terms of color scheme. We would also receive a new Luigi and Guido with new faces, and again, very accurate details. For a minute there, it seemed pretty great. These cars were being made in Vietnam versus the rest of the Cars line being made in Thailand, and it was interesting to see that for this line specifically, they were making these really nice updated variants, which in my opinion delivered the definitive non-Precision Series Sally and Luigi diecasts. Guido had his tool gun, so he's not really definitive, but he looked pretty good too. Unfortunately, this taking older car designs and updating them, while it's something we often see in the main line with the main characters, it didn't go beyond these two releases. So, this is also going in D tier. Lamer accessories, but some better cars. That's why it's balanced. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Anyway, we then move into 2023 with the Disney 100 line. To celebrate Disney's 100-year anniversary, they let Cars get in on the party and made some very nice-looking anniversary releases. At the time of making this video, I haven't reviewed all of them. I found 4 of the 6 when they first came out. I just didn't find the rest and ended up getting them for Christmas, just because I could not find them in stores. Now, the interesting thing with these is that they're technically not like a subline like the rest of these are. These are actually sold in the main line in regular mainline cases in 2023, and just so happen to be special edition cars. I kind of get why that was done. They wanted to make sure these Disney anniversary cars weren't tied down to any store. You could get them to celebrate Disney in 2023, which nobody was doing because it was an awful financial year for them. Woo! Anyway, the best thing about this line is just how good the cars look. They really, really did a beautiful job with these. These were not your typical silver. These were like a platinum silver. These cars look like silver statues. They look so good, like they don't even look like Cars toys. They look like little Cars trophies you could have. They did a really great job with these. While some definitely looked better than others, they all turned out pretty solid in my opinion. They took several main Radiator Springs characters, made them all silver down to the windows and the wheels and the tires, and just included one little splash of color on them, taking the character's main primary color they typically have and putting it on their side somewhere. McQueen ended up getting a very simplistic, stylized red lightning bolt. Doc had a fabulous Hudson Hornet written in a really nice shade of blue. Ramon had little purple fireballs on his side. Flo had her little area that's a different color, colored to her traditional color. And then Mater and Sally just had their hoods changed to their regular colors. They're easily the weakest in the line, in my opinion. But yeah, it was really nice to get these. They all look so good. It was also really nice to get Doc and Flo, who are always missing from lines like this. These cars, I think I gotta stick them in B tier. You know what? They're going in A. Yeah, I did it. Alright? Thank you. Now we move on to the Glow Racers. A line that I'm surprised it took them this long to do, but if you know your Cars history, you know that they've wanted to do glow-in-the-dark things for a while. As a glow-in-the-dark prototype Cars 3 McQueen floated around on the internet a few years back. They also did some glow-in-the-dark mini racers, most of which were pretty weak, which made me very concerned going into this line. But I was pleasantly surprised. I am very over these let's make a ton of next-gen variants nobody asked for lines. But the Glow Racer breathes new life into the concept by providing a really fun gimmick and making some really good-looking cars to go alongside it. At the time of the making of this video, I only have the first wave of 3 cars, but there are several more waves on the way. Wave 1 included McQueen, Cruz, and a crew chief Mater that, in my opinion, blows the NASCAR one out of the water. They all glow really well. I'll shut off my lights at night, and they will glow successfully and look good. I'll have to ask myself, what's glowing over there? Only to remember, oh yeah, the Glow Racers. They work really, really well, and they look good. And again, this is coming from me, someone who's super burnt out on all these expanded universe racer variant marathon lines. But I will say, not only did they win me over with how good the glow-in-the-dark gimmick looks and how good the cars themselves look, they also won me over by the fact that the line is also including Radiator Springs townfolk. Yes, they're dressed up as the pit crew, but we're getting a Mater, we already got a Mater, we're getting a Fillmore and a Ramon, and rumor lists say Sally and Ray Reverham, Jackson Storm's crew chief. That's so cool. I love that they're going beyond just racers. They're understanding, hey, let's not just do racers this time. We're doing glow-in-the-dark cars. We need to take advantage of that. We're doing the main cast too, and Ray Reverham. I'm really excited to see the future of the Glow Racers line, guys. This is going in A tier. This is just starting out. It has great potential, and going off what the rumor lists say, it's gonna be one of the best expanded universe lines we've ever gotten. And there you have it, guys. It's taken quite a while, but we've done it. A tier list of every, or I guess, like most, expanded universe Cars diecast lines and diecast line sub-series we've gotten over the years. To review, in F tier we have the Endurance Racers. Sorry guys, maybe next time. Then in E tier, the Rocket Racers. Again, these are the only two that I really don't like. D tier cars that are just pretty uninteresting. Beach Racers and the 2 series of Welcome to Radiator Springs. In C tier, we have the Silver Racers, Neon Racers, Carnival Racers, fan favorites, and the 2 Pixar Fest waves. Again, these were ones that I thought were good, just sort of mixed bags. In B tier, we have the Ice Racers, Carbon Racers, and NASCAR series. In A tier, for ones that I think are really good, we have the Drag Racers, the Disney 100 line, and the Glow Racers. And finally, in S tier, we have the Christmas cars, or the holiday line, or the wintertime line, whatever you want to call it, the Road Trip series, Easter cars, Thomasville Racers, and the XRS Mud Racers. Let me know where you would place everything in the comments. What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Was I being too mean to the Endurance Racers? The answer is no. Just kidding. I'd love to hear your opinion, especially if you're a fan of the Endurance Racers. Let me know what you like about them. I'd love to try to get an understanding of a line I just couldn't get behind. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.